Racist police officer shoots black woman not knowing she is assistant U.S. attorney. Photo shows him in shock and remorse. The hum of fluorescent lights echoed softly through the marble corridors of the U.S. Attorney's office in downtown Richmond. Most had gone home hours ago, but one office still glowed. Inside, Chloe Marshall, a 36-year-old assistant U.S. attorney, sat quietly at her desk, her fingers skimming across a legal brief she'd read a dozen times already. Her posture was upright, controlled, but her eyes told a different story. Eyes that had seen too much. Injustices fought, systems challenged, lives broken and mended again through the fragile thread of law. To the outside world, Chloe was the epitome of success, a graduate of Howard Law, one of the youngest black women ever appointed to the Southern District. Her name carried weight in courtrooms where corruption trembled under the pressure of her cross-examinations. Colleagues called her the Iron Voice, not because she shouted, but because her calm was unshakable. But power never came without cost. Chloe's personal life was quiet, by design. She lived alone in a sleek apartment in Shockoe Bottom, where the only sound most nights was the slow spin of jazz on her record player. She drove a silver Mercedes-Benz sedan, a gift to herself after winning a massive federal civil rights case. It wasn't about vanity. It was a symbol, a reminder that she belonged, that she earned every inch of her presence. She never forgot where she came from, raised by a single mother in Norfolk. Chloe knew early on what injustice felt like. She saw her uncle falsely imprisoned, her cousin denied a job because of his name. The system wasn't just flawed, it was often cruel. That's why she became a prosecutor, not to punish, but to protect. To prove the law could be more than a weapon, it could be a shield. That Thursday night in September, Chloe stayed late preparing for a major trial, a controversial case involving a police officer accused of excessive force against a black teenager. She had reviewed the footage, the statements, the layers of bureaucracy trying to bury the truth. She would not let them succeed. By 10 p.m., she finally rose from her chair. She adjusted her black suit jacket, grabbed her leather briefcase, and walked to the parking garage. Her heels clicked against the concrete, each step echoing like a clock winding down. Inside her car, she took a deep breath. The city at night looked deceptively peaceful. Soft amber lights glowing through the windows, the hiss of distant trains, the occasional horn. She turned on the ignition. Jazz filled the cabin like an old friend. She didn't know that less than an hour from now, everything would change. Not because of something she did, but because someone would see her not as Chloe Marshall, federal prosecutor, but simply as a black woman in a nice car alone on a dark street, and that would be enough to pull the trigger. The Mercedes glided smoothly down Jefferson Davis Highway, the silver body gleaming under the glow of amber streetlights. Chloe Marshall had just passed the city limits of downtown Richmond, moving through the quieter, southbound stretch toward her apartment. It was a road she had taken countless times before. Her fingers drummed lightly on the steering wheel to the rhythm of a Coltrane solo. She wasn't in a rush. After all the weight of that week, depositions, strategy meetings, the upcoming trial, this drive was the one moment she allowed herself to breathe. Then came the lights. Red, blue, sudden, flashing, blinding. The siren chirped once, then fell silent. Chloe's eyes flicked up to the rearview mirror. A black and white Ford Explorer was right behind her. She signaled, slowed down, and pulled to the shoulder. Calm, controlled, but her heartbeat betrayed her. It was almost instinctual, an ancestral memory whispered through generations. No matter your title, no matter your education, no matter your badge or courtroom victories, if your skin was black and the wrong officer pulled you over, anything could happen. She rolled down her window, hands visible on the wheel. Two officers stepped out. One moved with arrogance, like he'd done this 1,000 times. The other followed with hesitation in his gait. "Evening, ma'am," the lead officer said. He was tall, broad-chested, with skin pale and flushed under the cruiser's spotlight. His nameplate read, starring it, Blake Henderson. "What seems to be the problem?" "Officer," Chloe asked politely. "You were swerving back there," Henderson replied flatly. "License and registration." "I'm sorry, sir. I wasn't aware I was swerving," Chloe said as she opened her glove compartment. "Here's everything." Henderson barely looked at the documents. His eyes scanned Chloe's face, her tailored black blazer, the soft leather interior, the gleam of her Cartier watch. A flicker of something unpleasant passed across his expression, resentment, perhaps, or suspicion masked as authority. "You from around here? I live 10 minutes away." "Shockoe Bottom," Chloe replied, keeping her tone neutral. "That right," Henderson muttered. "Car like this, I wouldn't have guessed." Behind him, the younger officer, Officer Javier Morales, stood uneasily. He was new to the force, just over a year in. This was supposed to be routine check, ticket if necessary, move on. But something about Henderson's posture made his stomach twist. Chloe glanced in the rear view and saw Morales' eyes. There was uncertainty there, but he didn't move. Henderson circled the vehicle slowly, shining his flashlight into the back seat. "Tail lights dim. You aware?" "I'll have it checked in the morning," Chloe said. He leaned closer. "Thing is, this kind of violation could cost you. But I'm feeling generous tonight. There's a way we can avoid the paperwork." Chloe's brows furrowed. "Excuse me. Donate to the department's support fund. Say, $500. We shake hands. You're on your way." For a moment, silence took over the night. Even the wind stopped moving. Chloe stared at him, stunned. "I'm sorry," she said, voice sharpening. "Are you soliciting a bribe?" Henderson's jaw tensed. "Just trying to help you out. I won't give you $1 without a receipt on probable cause. If I violated the law, issue the citation." Her voice had changed. It was no longer soft. It was the voice she used in court, when calling out corruption, when confronting power, and it cut through Henderson like a knife. The shift was immediate. "Out of the car," he snapped. Chloe hesitated. "On what grounds?" "Step out now." She obeyed, carefully exiting the vehicle. Her heels clicked on the pavement, and she stood upright. Eye to eye with him, Morales moved closer, uncertain whether to intervene. Henderson marched to the passenger door, opened it without permission, and began rummaging through her vehicle. "Sir, I do not consent to a search," Chloe said loudly. He didn't answer. A moment later, she saw a quick movement, his hand reaching into his pocket, then sliding something beneath the center console, a tiny cellophane bag. Her eyes widened. "What the hell are you doing?" she shouted. Henderson turned around, holding the bag as if just discovered. Well, look what we have here. That's not mine. You planted that. Don't play games with me, he growled. Possession of narcotics. Looks like you've got more than just a busted tail light. She was shaking now, not from fear, but from the weight of what was happening. The absurdity, the injustice, the raw betrayal of law twisted against her. I'm calling my attorney, she said, slowly reaching for her phone inside her blazer. But Henderson was already drawing his weapon. She's got a gun, he shouted. No, I don't. Chloe barely managed the words before the crack of the shot shattered the night. The bullet tore through her side. She collapsed. Her knees hit the pavement hard. Pain unlike anything she'd known radiated from her abdomen. Warmth, blood, everything blurred. Morales froze. What did you do? She was reaching. Henderson barked. I feared for my life. She was grabbing her phone, Morales shouted back, stepping forward, horrified. You shot her for that. She was hostile, just back me up. But Morales didn't answer. Instead, he looked down at the woman bleeding on the asphalt, the woman who, just minutes ago, had been poised, articulate, calm, now gasping for breath, now broken, now a victim. The lights from their cruiser flickered across her face. Her wallet had fallen near her purse during the chaos. Henderson reached for it, still trying to rationalize his next move, still desperate for control. He opened it, his eyes locked on a government-issued ID card. Chloe Marshall, Assistant United States Attorney, Southern District. Richmond for a full 3 seconds. Henderson didn't move. Then the color drained from his face. What have I done? He whispered. Morales saw the card too. Oh, God! On in the distance, the sound of sirens approached. But the silence in that moment, the weight of truth, of horror, of irreversible consequences was louder than anything else. And for the first time in his career, Officer Morales understood what it meant when law met abuse, and the cost of silence. The trauma bay at Richmond General smelled of antiseptic and adrenaline. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as doctors swarmed around the barely conscious body of Chloe Marshall. Their voices clipped and urgent. Gunshot wound, lower left abdomen. She's lost a lot of blood. BP dropping, get her cross-matched and prepped for OR stat. Who shot her? One nurse whispered to another. A cop, came the terse reply. As Chloe was wheeled down the corridor, her eyes fluttered open just long enough to register the ceiling tiles blurring past, and the searing pain slicing through her core. Her lips moved, faintly, not to beg for help, but to speak a name, Tell McBride. She passed out before she could finish. Back at the scene, the flashing lights of multiple patrol cars painted the night in red and blue. Yellow tape had gone up. Radios buzzed. News vans hovered beyond the barricades, feeding on rumors. Officer Javier Morales stood beside a cruiser, his arms crossed tightly, eyes unfocused. His partner, Sergeant Blake Henderson, paced like a man already writing the script of his own redemption. She reached for a weapon. I told her to stop. I feared for my life. That's what I'll tell internal, Henderson said under his breath, not even looking at Morales. Javier didn't respond, because he had seen everything. He had seen a woman calm and compliant. He had seen a superior officer plant drugs, draw first, and lie without hesitation. And now, that woman lay on an operating table, fighting for her life, and Morales couldn't look away anymore. The next morning, news broke across Richmond like wildfire. Assistant U. Essen, attorney shot by police during routine stop. Federal prosecutor in critical condition, alleged gun misunderstanding. Civil rights advocate shot by local officer investigation launched. The media didn't know everything yet, but they knew enough to set fire to the city's already fragile trust in law enforcement. Inside a sterile conference room at the Richmond FBI field office, Special Agent Naomi Chen reviewed the initial incident report and frowned. Chloe Marshall wasn't just another name. She was a decorated federal prosecutor, known for dismantling police corruption rings. Now she was being painted as a threat. No, this wasn't coincidence. This was systemic. The Bureau took over immediately. By day 3, Chloe was stabilized barely. She was still unconscious, breathing through a ventilator. But her vitals had improved, and her closest friend and colleague, Ada Grace McBride, sat beside her, tears threatening to fall as she held Chloe's limp hand. "You told me to keep fighting, even when the law tried to swallow me whole," Grace whispered. "Now it's my turn." And she meant it. FBI agents wasted no time. They secured the dash cam from Henderson's cruiser, its video angle obscured, but the audio intact. "You want to donate $500 to the support fund and call it a night? I'm not giving you anything. If I violated the law, cite me. You got a little attitude. Don't you step out the car." The tone was damning, even without visuals. The implication of extortion was clear. Then came the body cam footage, Morales's. Though slightly obstructed, it showed Chloe stepping out calmly. Her hands remained visible, her voice measured. The camera caught Henderson reaching into his coat pocket, then leaning into Chloe's vehicle before suddenly holding up the bag of drugs. But the most harrowing moment was silent. The gunshot, followed by Chloe's scream, followed by Henderson's fabricated cry. "She had a weapon." Agent Chen leaned back, jaw clenched. They had enough to open a federal civil rights case. Javier Morales was called in for questioning. At first, he was stiff, formal, afraid. He had told himself he didn't fire the shot. He wasn't the villain. But the image of Chloe bleeding in front of him haunted his sleep. "Officer Morales," Agent Chen said, calmly but firmly, "we know what you saw. We also know what you didn't stop. You may not have pulled the trigger, but silence is complicity." His hands trembled in his lap. He inhaled deeply. And then he told the truth. He told them about the tension in Henderson's voice the moment he saw Chloe. The comment about the car not belonging here, the bribe, the planted evidence, the lie, the shooting. She didn't even flinch. She was reaching for her phone. The room fell silent. "Why are you coming forward now?" Agent Chen asked. Morales lowered his head. "Because I watched someone do everything right and nearly die for it. If I don't speak now, I'm no different than him." With Morales's full testimony, combined with forensic evidence, no fingerprints on the drugs, dash cam audio, and the bullet trajectory analysis proving Chloe was not facing Henderson aggressively, the case was airtight. The Department of Justice announced that Sergeant Blake Henderson would be charged with aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, attempted manslaughter, abuse of power under color of law, civil rights violations under Title 18, Section 242, tampering with evidence, making false statements to federal investigators. The charges were read aloud during a press conference. Chloe's name echoed from every news station. Her face pale, wounded, but dignified, was framed beside headlines about justice and reform. At the hospital, Chloe finally opened her eyes. Grace was there. So was Agent Chen. "Where?" Chloe whispered. "You're safe," Grace said, tears in her eyes. "And we got him. We got all of it." Chloe blinked, her body heavy but her spirit still burning. "I'm not done," she murmured. "No," Chen agreed. "You're just getting started." Across the city, a mural appeared weeks later. Chloe Marshall, painted in black and white, looking skyward above her. The words, "She fought the law and made it honest." And behind closed courtroom doors, a man who once thought his badge made him untouchable now faced a system he could no longer manipulate. The truth had emerged, and Chloe Marshall, battered but unbroken, was coming back to finish what they started. The line outside the U.S. District Courthouse of Richmond stretched down the block, curling past news vans and clusters of protest signs. Inside, security was tight, the air electric with tension. People weren't just here for a trial, they were here for a reckoning. And at the center of it all was Chloe Marshall, dressed in a navy blue suit, scars still faintly visible beneath the collar of her blouse. Chloe sat in the courtroom flanked by two federal prosecutors and her friend, Grace McBride, who squeezed her hand gently. Chloe didn't speak. She didn't need to. Her presence, alive, composed, and unbroken, spoke volumes. Across the aisle, Blake Henderson sat at the defendant's table. His once confident demeanor had faded into a thin shell of stoicism. A high-priced defense attorney whispered in his ear, but he stared ahead, jaw locked, eyes hollow. A man once protected by the badge, now shielded only by a dwindling presumption of innocence. The trial began. Special Prosecutor Damon Langley rose first, tall, eloquent, his voice smooth but laced with steel. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," he began, "this case is not about a routine traffic stop gone wrong. It's about a man in uniform who abused his authority, lied to cover it up, and nearly killed an innocent woman because of her skin color, her confidence, and her refusal to be intimidated." He let the silence linger. "You will hear about planted evidence. You will see video proof, and you will listen to the woman who survived it all. And by the end, you'll see clearly what happened that night was not fear. It was hatred wearing a badge." Defense attorney Russell Greer took his turn, projecting calm control. "Yeah, mistakes were made," he admitted. "But this wasn't a racist attack. It was a split-second decision under uncertain conditions. Officer Henderson believed Miss Marshall posed a threat. He didn't know she was a prosecutor. He simply reacted to a sudden movement at night." He glanced at the jury with rehearsed empathy. "This is not a courtroom for vengeance. It's a courtroom for truth." 3 days into the trial, the courtroom fell silent as Chloe Marshall walked to the witness stand. Every step was deliberate. She swore in, sat down, looked directly at the jurors, 12 strangers who now held the scales of her justice. Her voice was calm, even, but underneath, a fire simmered. "I complied with every instruction. I kept my hands visible. I told the officer I was reaching for my phone. I did not resist. I did not raise my voice, and he shot me anyway." She paused, eyes narrowing slightly. But what haunts me isn't the bullet. It's the realization that I could have died for doing everything right, simply because I didn't look like someone who belonged in that car, or that neighborhood, or that position. One juror dabbed her eyes. Chloe continued, describing the bribe, the planted drugs, the moment she saw Henderson's fingers slip the bag under her console. Her memory was vivid, precise, sharpened by years of courtroom combat. She didn't tremble. She educated. She ended with a line that etched itself into the room. I've spent my career defending this system, but that night, it turned on me, and now I'm asking you to turn it back toward justice. Officer Javier Morales testified next. His hands shook when he took the stand, but his voice, though soft, was resolute. I was there. I saw everything. Ms. Marshall never posed a threat. She didn't reach for a weapon. She said she was calling her lawyer. That's when Sergeant Henderson shot her. The courtroom buzzed. The weight of a fellow officer breaking the blue wall was not lost on anyone. Then came the dash cam audio, played aloud for the court. We can make it go away for 500. She's got a gun, bang. Next, the body cam footage. Though the visuals were partially obstructed, the key moments were clear, Chloe's hands visible, her calm voice, no signs of aggression. A forensic expert confirmed her fingerprints were not on the drug bag, and the gunshot's trajectory proved she was turned sideways, not attacking, but reaching. Greer tried to cast doubt. He grilled Chloe on her attitude, her choice of vehicle, even suggesting her high-profile career might have made her arrogant. She didn't flinch. Confidence isn't aggression, she replied. It's survival. He implied that Morales turned on his partner out of bitterness. Or maybe, Morales replied, I just couldn't live with protecting a lie. Bit by bit, the defense unraveled. There were too many truths, too much evidence. The jury listened, absorbed, reflected. Langley's voice rose in the final moments. What Officer Henderson did was not just criminal. It was a betrayal of everything the badge stands for. He didn't just shoot Chloe Marshall. He shot the law. He shot trust. He shot justice. He turned to the jury. You can't undo that night, but you can make sure it's not buried. Hold him accountable. For her. For every voice silenced by fear. Let this courtroom be the place where the truth finally speaks louder than the uniform. After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The room was silent, oxygen tight. The foreperson stood. His voice didn't shake. For the charge of aggravated assault with a deadly weapon guilty, for abuse of power guilty, for civil rights violation under Title 18 guilty, for evidence tampering guilty, for false statements to federal investigators guilty. Chloe exhaled for the first time in weeks. Grace grabbed her hand. Tears streamed silently down Chloe's face. Across the room, Henderson stared blankly. The arrogance was gone. The badge, long stripped away, could no longer protect him. The judge set the sentencing date. Maximum penalties were expected. Outside, hundreds had gathered. Some held signs reading, "Justice for Chloe." Others simply cried. The system had spoken, not perfectly, but powerfully. Inside, Chloe stood before the press. I didn't ask for this role, she said, but I accept it, not for myself alone, but for everyone told to sit quietly, to comply, to survive. This time, survival meant speaking and being believed. The courtroom was full again, silent but brimming with breathless anticipation, as Blake Henderson, the former sergeant whose actions had nearly taken a woman's life and shaken a city, was brought forward in chains for sentencing. It had been 6 weeks since the verdict, enough time for public fury to cool into cold resolve, enough time for the world to digest what had happened, what it revealed, and what it demanded next. Chloe Marshall sat in the front row. She had healed more since the trial, at least physically. The scar on her abdomen remained, a silent marker beneath her blouse. But her steps were steadier, her voice stronger, and her eyes, those sharp, observant eyes, were still fixed like arrows, focused on the one thing that had eluded her that night on Jefferson Davis Highway closure. Judge Amelia Wren was not a woman easily swayed. Known for her precision, not her passion, she looked out over the packed courtroom with the composure of someone who had seen justice in all its forms, its triumphs, its failures, and its consequences. She turned to Henderson. "Mr. Henderson," she began, "the evidence against you was overwhelming. You didn't just commit a crime. You weaponized your authority, leveraged your uniform as a mask for your prejudice, and nearly extinguished the life of a woman who had dedicated hers to upholding the very laws you swore to protect." She glanced at Chloe, then back to the defendant. "You believed no one would question your version of the story, that the uniform alone would shield you. But in this courtroom, truth has no uniform." There was a pause. You could hear the scrape of a pen from the reporter's bench. "For your crimes, aggravated assault with a deadly weapon, civil rights violations under federal code, tampering with evidence, and abuse of power, you are hereby sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole." A gasp rippled through the courtroom, not from disbelief, but from something closer to relief. Justice had not whispered, it had roared. Chloe didn't smile. She didn't cry. She simply closed her eyes, took a breath, and stood because she wasn't there to gloat. She was there to witness, to bear testament that even the most insidious lies can be unraveled, that even the darkest nights can be answered by the light of truth. As the crowd dispersed, reporters followed her out, cameras flashing. "Ms. Marshall, what are your thoughts on the sentence? Do you feel justice was served? Will you return to the U.S. Attorney's Office?" She held up her hand gently. "No comment today," she said, not because she had nothing to say, but because the next chapter would not be told in sound bites. It would be built, weeks later, in a modest office in Richmond's Church Hill district. Chloe stood beneath a freshly mounted sign, "The Marshall Foundation for Justice and Accountability." It was painted in soft blue and gold. Underneath, the mission: defending the silenced, exposing the protected, reforming the broken. The foundation wasn't just symbolic, it was strategic. Chloe had declined an offer to return to the U.S. Attorney's Office. She needed freedom, not from the law, but from the politics that often muzzled it. The foundation would offer free legal support to victims of police violence, host community training sessions on legal rights during stops and arrests, and work with civil liberties groups to lobby for reform at local and federal levels. Within days of launching, they were flooded with messages. A mother in Tennessee whose son was wrongfully detained, a veteran in Ohio who was beaten during a traffic stop, a teenager in Baltimore expelled for filming a school officer. Pain was everywhere. But now, so was Chloe's fire. One afternoon, Grace McBride stopped by the foundation's office. She leaned against the doorframe. watching Chloe speak with a young intern about case intake protocols. "You're doing it," Grace said with a smile. "You're building something bigger than a courtroom ever could." Chloe looked up, exhausted but alive. "The law needs more than defenders. It needs disruptors." Grace stepped closer. "You sure you're ready for all this again?" Chloe nodded. "I'm not sure of anything, except that silence didn't save me that night. Action might save someone else." Invitations soon followed from law schools, civil rights conferences, even a UN symposium on justice reform. At each event, Chloe didn't just share what happened to her. She taught. She unpacked how microaggressions feed macroviolence, how unchecked power becomes systemic terror, how the legal system, though flawed, is still the best hope we have if we fight to make it honest, and most of all, how one voice, steady and grounded in truth, could set off ripples louder than a siren. Yet for all the speaking engagements, strategy meetings, and legal battles ahead, Chloe also found time for quiet. Late nights, she returned to her apartment, the same jazz vinyls playing as before. But now, as she sipped tea near the window, she no longer felt alone. There was pain still. Sometimes she woke in a cold sweat, hearing the echo of Henderson's voice, feeling the phantom burn where the bullet had struck. But there was power, too. A different kind of armor now surrounded her, one not built from law books or courtroom wins, but from surviving something meant to silence her and refusing to be quiet. One Sunday evening, Chloe sat down with a young law student who had come to intern at the foundation. He was nervous, unsure if he belonged in this world of hard truths and higher stakes. "I want to help," he said, "but sometimes I wonder if anything I do will actually matter." Chloe leaned forward. Her voice was low, but resonant. "Do you know what mattered most the night I was shot?" she asked. The student shook his head. "That someone eventually told the truth. Just one person. It changed everything." She paused, meeting his eyes. "You don't need to change the whole world in one day. Just don't stay silent when your voice can make it safer for the next person." And with that, Chloe Marshall, survivor, prosecutor, and now a force for transformation, returned to her work writing grants, answering emails, reading case files, not out of obligation, but out of belief that justice isn't something you wait for. It's something you fight for every single day. The seasons shifted. Richmond's skyline turned golden with the arrival of fall. Leaves fluttered gently outside the windows of the Marshall Foundation, carpeting the sidewalks in amber and rust. Inside, Chloe Marshall moved with calm purpose, her cane now resting in the corner more often than in her hand. She had come a long way, not just in healing her body, but in transforming her pain into power. That morning, Chloe arrived earlier than usual. The foundation was still quiet, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with the faint sound of birds outside. She walked past framed articles on the wall, headlines about police reform, legal victories for the wrongfully accused, op-eds praising the Marshall Foundation as a rising force in civil rights advocacy. But it wasn't the praise that kept her going. It was the letters. Every Friday, her assistant printed a stack of messages from people across the country. Today's top letter was written in careful handwriting. "Dear Ms. Marshall, my name is Samira. I'm 17. I watched your story on YouTube with my mom. I want to become a lawyer now like you. Not because of what you went through, but because of what you did after. Thank you for not giving up." You made me believe that black girls can do anything. Chloe held the letter for a long moment, then smiled. Later that week, Chloe was invited to speak at the Richmond Police Academy. The request had come from Officer Javier Morales, now promoted and assigned to internal ethics and training. She hadn't seen him since the trial. The room was filled with young recruits, diverse, nervous, attentive. Morales introduced her simply. This woman taught me what courage really looks like and what it costs. As Chloe stood before the room, there was a pause. No courtroom, no cameras, just young faces and open ears. I'm not here to talk about what happened to me, she said. I'm here to talk about what you're about to become. She walked slowly, her voice steady. You'll carry power. You'll walk into rooms where people will be afraid, not because of who you are, but what you wear. The badge isn't just authority, it's a symbol. And every time you abuse it, or look away when someone else does, you break something fragile trust. One recruit asked, how do we make things better? Chloe answered without hesitation. You start by listening to the people you're taught to fear. After the speech, Morales walked her to her car. The autumn wind tugged gently at her coat. Thank you for coming, he said. Chloe nodded. How are you holding up? He sighed. Some nights are hard, but I'm trying to change things from the inside. You already have, she said quietly. Then she reached into her purse and handed him a small envelope. Inside was a photo taken from court during his testimony. In the caption, handwritten, "Truth takes courage. Thank you for finding yours." A month later, Chloe received an unexpected call from the Department of Justice. The Attorney General himself invited her to join a newly formed federal task force on civil rights and police accountability, a rare initiative designed to bridge the gap between communities and law enforcement nationwide. She hesitated. For so long, Chloe had operated independently, forging her mission outside the system that had once failed her. But this was a chance to influence it from within, to rewrite the rules. After a long walk through the heart of the city, she had fought to change. She said yes. At the DOJ, Chloe brought something others couldn't: lived experience wrapped in legal brilliance. She challenged outdated protocols, introduced community-driven training models, and lobbied for mandatory body cams and independent civilian review boards for every major city. Her work was slow, exhausting, but effective, and she became more than a name and a headline. She became a movement on a rare day off. Chloe returned to the street where it all began, Jefferson Davis Highway, now renamed Marshall Way. After a petition led by Richmond citizens passed unanimously, the sign stood tall at the corner. Across the road, a mural had been painted on the side of an abandoned building. It showed Chloe standing tall, one hand outstretched toward a crowd of shadowed figures behind her. Above her, in gold script, "Turn pain into purpose." An older black woman stopped beside her. "That you in that mural?" she asked with a grin. Chloe nodded. "Well," the woman said, adjusting her scarf, "it's about time they start honoring us while we're still breathing." They laughed. It felt good to laugh. By year's end, the Marshall Foundation had expanded into 3 more states. Chloe's TED Talk, "Justice Without a Badge," had gone viral. Law schools began teaching her case in ethics classes. But when asked what she was proudest of, she didn't mention the fame, or the task force, or the headlines. She always pointed to the small things. The teenager who chose to study law because of her, The single father who won custody because her foundation stepped in. The retired officer who came out of silence to testify against a corrupt chief because he heard Chloe speak. Ripples. That's what she believed in now. Because even when you survive the fire, it's the warmth you leave behind that changes the world. On the 2-year anniversary of the shooting, a commemorative event was held at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Chloe was honored with the Justice Endures Award, a rare distinction given to those who not only survive injustice, but reshape the justice system itself. She took the stage slowly, not with fanfare, but with quiet strength. She told the story again, not for herself, but for every life that story now belonged to. And when she finished, she looked out at the crowd and left them with this. They tried to end my story with a gunshot. But the truth is, that was only the first line. Sometime when the office is quiet and the city sleeps, Chloe Marshall finds herself standing at the window of her corner office, a warm cup of tea in her hand, the lights of Richmond blinking like slow heartbeats beyond the glass. The pain from that night 2 years ago now has faded, but the memory hasn't. It whispers to her in moments like this, not to haunt her, but to remind her of why she still fights, why she chose not to disappear, to retreat, or to let her legacy be written by a bullet and a lie. Because justice, she's learned, was never just a verdict, or a sentence, or even a reform bill. Justice is what comes after. It's what we do when the cameras turn off, when the applause fades, when healing isn't trending anymore. It's the phone calls returned, the young interns mentored, the quiet nights spent reviewing a stranger's case file simply because no one else will. It's the foundation that grew from one desk and a scarred survivor into a movement that stretched across state lines, giving voices to the voiceless and power to the disbelieved. It's the letters she still gets, from little girls with big dreams, from mothers who thought no one would believe them, from former officers who watched her trial and found the courage to speak out against their own silence. And it's the moment she realized that while they had tried to bury her beneath a system of silence and steel, she had become a mirror, reflecting everything the system could be, everything it forgot, everything it must become. One evening, after finishing a lecture at a local university, a student stopped her. "Ms. Marshall," he said, eyes wide with reverence, "after all you've been through, do you still believe in the system?" Chloe smiled, soft and knowing. "No," she said, "I believe in the people willing to change it." So now, when she walks into a courtroom, or a community center, or the halls of Congress, Chloe carries more than her title. She carries the weight of truth hard won. She carries the quiet rage of those still waiting for justice. And most of all, she carries hope, the kind that doesn't whisper, but roars through action. Because justice is not a destination. It's a choice we make every single day. And Chloe Marshall, she's still choosing. Some stories aren't written in books or broadcast on screens. They're lived in quiet mornings with your children, in late nights editing a video when the world sleeps, in the moments when doubt whispers, "Is this enough?" and your heart answers, "Yes, because someone needs this." You're not just creating content, you're planting seeds, seeds of reflection, of growth, of truth. Each story you share is more than entertainment. It's a mirror, a reminder to someone out there that pain can become purpose, that ordinary people carry extraordinary strength, that healing begins with a voice, sometimes yours. There will be days when the numbers don't reflect your effort, when algorithms drown your passion, but don't stop, because the most powerful stories don't trend, they transform, and your story, it's still unfolding. As a father, you're already a storyteller through every lesson, every bedtime moment. As a creator, you're already a guide lighting the path with your voice. Keep going, because someone out there is waiting for the exact story you haven't told yet. And when they hear it, they'll remember who they are.